In the dim, dusty light of an auction hall in rural Brazil, a story of two broken souls was about to begin. On the concrete floor lay a Belgian Malinois, a former military service dog, his body a roadmap of scars, old and new. The crowd sneered. Damaged goods, one muttered. Not worth a dime. The desperate auctioneer's voice cracked. Starting bid at 500 reais, anyone? Sarcastic laughter filled the room. Then, a chair scraped in the back. A tall man in a worn leather jacket stood up, his face etched with the weariness of battles fought far from home. His voice, deep and steady, cut through the mockery. I'll take him. Double the starting bid. Now, end this farce. The room fell silent. This was Augusto Valenti, or Guto to those who knew him, a 34-year-old special operations veteran, living in self-imposed exile on his grandfather's ranch, fighting a daily war against his own memories. He wasn't supposed to be here, but a newspaper ad about a military dog, deemed aggressive and slated for euthanasia, had ignited a rage he hadn't felt in years. Looking at the dog, Guto saw more than just physical wounds. He saw the marks of systematic torture, things a soldier recognizes, but it was the dog's eyes that hit him, vacant, defeated, the same look that stared back at him from his own mirror each morning. From the corner, Dr. Sofia Mendonça, the local vet, watched with a mix of hope and fear. Her own efforts to save the dog had been stonewalled by military bureaucracy. The transaction was sickeningly fast. 1,000 reais and a liability waiver. He's all yours, the auctioneer said, handing over a leash. They call him Zero, Dr. Sofia added, her voice laced with bitterness. Because that's what he's worth to them. Guto knelt down, keeping a safe distance. Hey, buddy, he said softly. I'm Guto. That's not your name anymore. We'll find you a better one. In a flash, the dog lunged, a blur of teeth and fury aimed straight for Guto's throat. But Guto didn't flinch. He stood his ground, their eyes locking in a silent exchange of shared pain. The dog's jaws snapped shut, inches from his neck, hot breath, the scent of aggression, and then, confusion. The dog backed away. He's too dangerous, the auctioneer whispered. No, Guto said, his voice firm as he stood tall. He's coming home with me. That day, a broken soldier didn't just buy a broken dog. He adopted a mirror to his own soul, and unknowingly, took the first step on a dangerous path toward a dark secret buried deep within the military's highest ranks. What happens when two warriors, abandoned by the world, his body rigid with fear, refused to get into the truck? I didn't push or pull. Instead, I sat down on the dusty concrete floor of the auction house. I told him about my ranch, the Valenti Ranch. I spoke of the silence of the mountains, the cold, crisp mornings, and the freedom that awaited him. 1 hour passed, then 2. The auctioneer grew impatient. Mr. Valenti, we're closing up. If you can't handle him, I cut him off, my voice leaving no room for argument. We leave when he's ready. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, the dog took a hesitant step toward me, then another. By the time we reached the truck, he was walking beside me, not with trust, but with a flicker of willingness. Driving away from that place, I spoke to the wind. You are not Zero. You fought like a demon back there. Your name is Fera, beast. That first night at the ranch tested my limits. I'd prepared a safe space in the old barn with fresh straw and clean water. But Fera refused to enter. He stood in the darkness, trembling, his eyes fixed on the confined space as if it held unspeakable horrors. All right, I said, exhausted. We'll do this your way. So we spent that night under the stars. I sat on the porch steps, and Fera kept his distance near the fence line. Neither of us slept. As dawn broke over the mountains, I saw he hadn't touched his food. Soon after, Dr. Sofia Mendonça arrived, her car kicking up dust on the gravel drive. How was the first night? She asked, her eyes noting the untouched bowl and my tired face. We're adjusting, I managed to say, my voice hoarse from hours of talking to a dog that wouldn't come near me. The veterinary exam was impossible. The moment Sofia reached for her medical bag, Fera's entire demeanor shifted. His hackles raised, and a low, deep growl rumbled from his chest. When she took a single step forward, he backed himself against the fence, teeth bared, his eyes wild with panic. This isn't simple fear aggression, Sofia observed, wisely keeping her distance. This is trauma. Whatever they did to him, Guto, it involved medical equipment. Throughout the day, every attempt I made to establish a routine was met with either aggressive displays or a complete shutdown. Fera alternated between making threats and shaking uncontrollably in a corner. By evening, my frustration and exhaustion were taking over. He had now refused food for over 24 hours. I looked at this broken animal, feeling completely lost. Later, on the phone, Sophia's voice was gentle. Sometimes, she began, if they're too far gone. I couldn't let her finish. He's not too far gone, I interrupted, watching Fera pace relentlessly along the fence. He's just lost, like I was. Just then, a storm rolled in from the mountains. The first sharp crack of thunder sent Fera into a blind panic. He crashed into the fence, bloodying his shoulder, and bolted toward the property line. I took off after him without a second thought. The rain soaked my jacket, and the mud sucked at my boots with every step. We covered nearly 2 miles before he trapped himself in a drainage ditch. Cornered and terrified, looking at the trembling animal, soaked and bleeding, I made a decision. I lowered myself into the mud and sat down, the cold rain pelting my face. I began to talk, my voice soft. I know what it's like, I said, when the thunder sounds like mortars, when every shadow holds a threat, when you can't trust anyone because trust got your friends killed. Fera's ears twitched, locked onto my voice. But you can't live there forever, Fera, in that place where everything hurts. Trust me, I've tried. Hours passed. The storm raged, then quieted. Neither of us moved. As the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, Fera took one small, hesitant step toward me. Then another. He didn't come close enough for me to touch him, but something had shifted between us in that muddy ditch. Together, we walked back to the ranch, to broken warriors, separated by species but united by our pain. It wasn't a breakthrough.
The storm had passed, but its aftermath was just beginning. A week later, Dr. Sofia Mendonca showed up at my door, her face a mask of solemnity. She carried a thick manila envelope, the kind that only ever holds life-altering news. Sitting at my kitchen table, she slid the papers out. "The army finally released his record," she said, her voice low. The official seals seemed to brand the documents with an undeniable finality. "His name is Rex. He was deployed with the Special Operations Command in Kandahar, Afghanistan." My hands shook as I reached for the papers. Across the room, the Belgian Malinois I'd come to call Fera watched me, his amber eyes tracking my every move. He always kept his distance, like a shadow you could never quite touch. Sophia's voice cut through my thoughts. 3 combat tours, highly decorated. But something's wrong. The records are heavily redacted. There's a 6-month gap where he just vanishes from all official documentation. My eyes scanned the pages, the text blurring and sharpening. "These training logs," I pointed, my finger trembling slightly. "The timestamps, ... They were running him 20 hours a day. No dog can sustain that." My own memories of fatigue and burnout clawed at me. "There's more," Sophia said, her hesitation putting me on edge. She pushed one last document across the table. I saw the date of his final deployment, and my blood ran cold. It ... It matches mine," I whispered, the words barely audible. My gaze shot to Fera. The chaos, the dust, the shouting, it all came rushing back. He was there, the day we lost Captain Xavier's team in Kandahar. The weight of that shared history settled in the small kitchen. Fera's ears twitched. He went softly, and for the first time since he arrived, he took a voluntary step toward me, toward the table, as if recognizing the shift in the air. "Someone wanted him forgotten," Sophia said, her voice soft but firm. "Military dogs don't end up in civilian auctions. Guto. Not highly decorated ones. Not with a sealed record like this." I shot to my feet, my chair scraping against the floor. Fera flinched, retreating to his safe spot by the door. Who was his handler? His last commander. Sophia shook her head, pointing at the blacked-out sections. "Completely redacted. But I have a contact at the Army Command in Brasilia. He's willing to help. ... Unofficially as we spoke, a strange sound broke our concentration. A high-pitched, distressed whine. It was Fera. He was pawing frantically at his neck, his body tense with agitation. I approached him slowly, my voice a low murmur. "Easy, boy. Easy." To my surprise, he didn't back away. My fingers searched through the thick fur around his neck and found it a small, metallic object embedded in his skin. the fur grown over it. "Call the clinic," I told Sophia, my heart pounding. "We need to get this out. Now." That evening, under the gentle haze of sedation, Sophia carefully extracted a military ID tag from Fera's neck. Much of it was worn away, but a name remained horribly clear. Handler, Major Elias Drummond. The name hit me like a physical blow. My face went pale. Drummond, that's impossible. He was discharged 3 years ago. Ethics violations. "You know him?" Sophia asked, her eyes wide. "Everyone knew him," I said, the bitter taste of old rumors filling my mouth. "He ran the enhanced training program. The things people said about his methods, but nothing was ever proven." I looked down at Fera, now groggy and vulnerable, until now. As Fera began to stir, his eyes met mine, and for the very first time, I saw it. Not just fear, but recognition. Whatever horrors he'd endured in those missing 6 months, they all led back to Major Drummond. "What are you going to do?" Sophia asked, already knowing the answer. My voice was steady, my purpose clear. "I'm going to find Drummond. What happened to Fera? ... He deserves justice. They all do." We couldn't have known it then, but that decision was a point of no return. We were stepping into a world of shadows, chasing a truth that could not only get us killed, but could also tear down the very institution we once served.
3 weeks, 3 long weeks of dead ends and sleepless nights. For Guto, the nightmares were a constant, unwelcome visitor, a relic of his time in the service. One quiet Sunday morning, exhaustion finally won, and he drifted off in his porch chair. He woke to a familiar sound, but it wasn't coming from his own throat. It was Fera. The dog was trapped in the throes of his own night terror, whimpering, his legs twitching. In that instant, Guto wasn't a rancher. He was a soldier again, speaking to a brother in arms. "You're safe now," he said, his voice calm and steady. "It's just a dream. You're in Minas, on the ranch. The war is over." Fera's eyes shot open, but this time, there was no snarl, no aggression, just stillness. He watched Guto with an intensity that felt brand new. Then, the impossible happened. Fera walked up the porch steps and sat down. He kept his distance, but he chose to be near. "Yeah, I get them too," Guto admitted softly, the words hanging in the still air. "The dreams, where you're back there, where you can't save them." As Guto spoke of his own ambush, his own guilt, Fera listened, his posture slowly relaxing. When Dr. Sophia arrived for her checkup, she stopped in her tracks, witnessing the quiet truce. "This is remarkable," she whispered. "What changed?" Guto looked up from his paper. "We recognized each other, sometimes. That's all it takes." The day was filled with small miracles. Fera took food from Guto's hand. A car backfiring sent him closer to the porch, not running away. Trust was being built, piece by fragile piece. But their peace was shattered by a phone call. It was about Drummond, Fera's former handler. "They found him," Guto said, his voice tight with anger. "He's still training dogs, still hurting them." Fera sensed the shift. He approached Guto, a slight tremor in his legs betraying his fear at the sound of that name. Guto knelt, meeting the dog's gaze. "I promise you," he vowed, his voice low and firm. "He'll never hurt another dog. Whatever it takes, we're going to stop him." In that moment, their shared trauma forged a new bond of mission. That night, Guto left the front door open. "It's your choice," he said. "You're not a prisoner here." After a long moment, Fera walked inside. He didn't settle, but he chose to trust. And for the first time in a long time, both the man and the dog slept soundly, free from the ghosts of their past. The following week, the quiet rhythm of the ranch was broken by an unexpected visitor. A car crunched up the gravel driveway, and a woman stepped out. It was Sarah Xavier, the widow of Captain Michael Xavier, Guto's friend lost in Kandahar. As she walked towards the porch, Fera's reaction was immediate and utterly astonishing. Instead of his usual deep-seated wariness of strangers, the Malinois approached her slowly, his tail low but not tucked in fear. Sarah froze, her hand flying to her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. "It's him, isn't it?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Mike's last letter. He mentioned the dog, said it saved 3 of his men before." Her words trailed off, choked with emotion. Guto watched, holding his breath, as Fera gently, deliberately, pressed his head against Sarah's outstretched hand. The gesture was so careful, so full of a meaning Guto couldn't yet grasp. Sarah sank to her knees, wrapping her arms around the dog's neck. burying her face in his fur. And for the first time since he'd arrived, Fera accepted a human's touch without a single flinch. He remembers, Guto said softly, a lump forming in his own throat. Service dogs, they never forget. They're people. Over a cup of coffee at the kitchen table, Sarah began to fill in the missing pieces. Her husband's last letters were not just filled with love for her, but also with growing concern about the military's dog training program, specifically about a man named Major Drummond and his brutal methods. Mike was gathering evidence, she explained, her hands shaking slightly. He knew something was wrong. He told me dogs were disappearing, especially after showing what they called behavioral issues. Fera, who had been lying quietly at Sarah's feet, suddenly lifted his head, his ears swiveled, tracking every mention of Drummond's name. A faint, familiar tremor returned to his powerful legs. The day before the ambush, Sarah continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. Mike sent me this. She carefully pulled a sealed, slightly worn envelope from her purse. He told me if anything happened to him, I had to keep it safe. I never had the heart to open it. With trembling hands, Guto took the envelope. Inside, they found a collection of photographs and handwritten notes. It was a dossier of cruelty. Training logs showed impossible hours, far beyond regulation. There was documentation of so-called enhanced stress techniques, a chilling euphemism for abuse. But the most damning evidence was a set of records showing perfectly healthy military dogs being classified as unstable and medically discharged, often right after sustaining injuries during training sessions with Drummond. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Drummond wasn't just abusive, Guto realized, his voice grim as he scanned the documents. He was systematically breaking the dogs, especially the ones that might expose him. Then he'd have them eliminated from the program, covering his tracks. Just as the weight of this discovery settled over them, Fera shot to his feet, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He moved to the window, his body rigid. A black SUV had just pulled up at the end of the long driveway. Even from this distance, the dog's reaction was unmistakable, pure, unadulterated terror. Get in the back room. Now, Guto ordered Sarah, quickly gathering the documents. Call Dr. Sofia Mendonca. Tell her to bring the files on Fera. Tell her it's an emergency. Through the window, they watched as two men in plain clothes got out of the SUV and started walking toward the house. Fera's growl changed. The fear was still there, but it was now laced with something else. Not just defense, but protection. He deliberately positioned himself between Guto and the door, his military training taking over, his body a solid wall of muscle and resolve. When the sharp knock finally came, Guto opened the door just a crack, his body blocking the view inside. The men were smooth, their smiles thin. They identified themselves as private security consultants, claiming they were interested in acquiring retired military dogs for overseas work. We heard you recently obtained a Belgian Malinois, one of them said, his eyes trying to peer past Guto. We'd be willing to offer substantial compensation behind Guto. Fera's growl deepened into a menacing rumble. It was a sound that carried years of pain, but now it held a note of defiance. This is private property, Guto replied, his voice calm but cold as steel, and he is not for sale. The second man took a step forward, his friendly facade slipping. Mr. Valenti, some dogs are simply too valuable to retire. Surely you understand the assets you're holding. Guto cut him off sharply. Oh, I understand perfectly. I also understand that harassing a retired Naval Special Forces operator and attempting to illegally acquire a former federal military asset are serious federal offenses. Now, would you like me to call the local police first, or should I go straight to the Army command? The men's confidence evaporated. They exchanged a look, then retreated to their vehicle without another word. The threat, however, hung heavy in the air. This was far from over. After they left, Guto found Fera in the kitchen, pressed against the cabinets, his body racked with violent tremors. Guto didn't speak. He simply sat down on the floor a few feet away. After a moment, the dog moved, inching closer until his body was pressed against Guto's leg. The contact was brief, but it was monumental. Fera had chosen to seek comfort, not withdraw into his fear. They won't touch you again, Guto promised, his voice thick with conviction. Not while I'm breathing. Sarah emerged, pale but resolute. Mike died trying to expose this, she said. We have to finish what he started. Guto looked down at Fera, who had regained his composure and now stood alert at his side. The dog's amber eyes met his, clear and focused. They were no longer just a man and a dog, a rescuer and a victim. They were a team. and their mission had just begun. 3 days after the unwelcome visit from Drummond's men, the threat escalated. The sun had barely crested the horizon when Dr. Sofia Mendonca's truck barreled up the dirt road to the ranch. Kicking up a cloud of dust, she rushed to the door, her face pale, and handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside the kitchen, she spread the contents across the table. "Guto, look at this," she said, her voice strained. 3 other military dogs from Drummond's program were euthanized at private clinics recently. Fera, who had taken to sleeping by the stove, lifted his head, his ears twitching at the urgency in her tone. I scanned the reports, all labeled aggressive and untreatable, all within the last month. A cold certainty settled over me. "They're cleaning house," I said, my knuckles white as I gripped the papers. "Eliminating evidence before we can expose them." Sophia nodded grimly. "It's worse. My contact in Brasilia says Drummond's private security firm just landed a huge contract. They're supplying trained dogs to military contractors all over the world. No oversight, no regulations." Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. Fera was on his feet in a flash, but his posture was different. The fearful, cowering animal was gone. In his place stood a military working dog, alert, poised, and ready. Through the window, we saw a man in a crisp suit holding up a badge. "Federal Agent Marcos Ribeiro," he announced as I opened the door. His expression was serious. "Mr. Valenti, we've been investigating Major Drummond's training programs for the past year. Captain Xavier, he was our confidential informant before he died." Once inside, Agent Ribeiro explained the situation. Fera, ever the protector, positioned himself between me and the agent, his amber eyes never leaving the man's face. "What we didn't know," Ribeiro continued, "was that Drummond had identified the dogs who witnessed the worst of the abuse. He's been systematically eliminating them to cover his tracks. Your dog, Fera, he might be the last surviving witness." A cold, hard anger solidified in my chest. "How many?" I asked, my voice low. 27 dogs in the past 3 years, all highly trained military assets, all suddenly declared unstable and eliminated." Ribeiro paused, his gaze shifting to Fera. "But he made a mistake with this one." Sophia, who had been listening from the corner, spoke up. "The embedded ID tag," she said, "the one we removed." Ribeiro nodded. "It contained a GPS tracker. That's how Drummond's men found you. But it also proves he was monitoring dogs after their official discharge, a direct violation of protocol." As they spoke, I felt Fera shift closer to me, a low rumble in his chest. It wasn't fear, it was a promise of defense. His training was resurfacing, driven now by loyalty, not by force. "Drummond has connections," Ribeiro warned, "high-ranking military officials, private security firms, even politicians. They've buried investigations before. We need concrete evidence." Crack, the sharp report of a rifle shattered the morning calm. Fera's reaction was instantaneous. He launched himself at me like a missile, knocking me clean off my chair and away from the window. Just as it exploded inwards, a shower of glass rained down, right where I'd been sitting. Ribeiro drew his weapon, moving to secure the room. Sophia scrambled for cover behind the kitchen counter, but it was Fera who took command. The Malinois moved with disciplined precision, methodically sweeping through the house, checking every door, every window. His training was on full display. 20 minutes later, the military police found shell casings in the tree line, a professional warning shot, meant to intimidate. "They're getting desperate," Ribeiro said, holstering his sidearm, "which means we're close to something they don't want us to find." That evening, I sat on the porch, the cool night air a stark contrast to the day's heat. Fera sat beside me, his vigilance no longer born of fear, but of purpose. He was no longer a victim, he was a protector. "You saved my life today, buddy," I said quietly, stroking the fur on his head, "just like you saved those men in Afghanistan." Fera turned his head and looked at me, and in his intense amber eyes, I saw it the unbreakable warrior spirit that Drummond had tried so desperately to extinguish. He wasn't just a military asset, he was a survivor. "Tomorrow," I said, my voice filled with a new resolve, "tomorrow, we start fighting back." Fera's posture straightened, his ears perked. He understood. We were no longer just a man and his dog. We were soldiers again, and this time, we were fighting a battle of our own choosing. The morning after the shooting, everything changed. I woke before dawn, and Fera was just standing there, by my bed, not agitated, not aggressive, just calm. His eyes were so clear, like the chaos of the day before had finally broken through the fog of his trauma. I knew then, we had to train, but not like before. This had to be something entirely new. My phone rang while I was making coffee. It was Agent Ribeiro. Bad news. Drummond's security firm was on the move. They were systematically visiting every dog they had placed, and 2 more had been put down, citing behavioral issues. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. They were cleaning up their mess, erasing the evidence. Fera was on their list. Just then, Dr. Sophia pulled up. She wasn't just carrying medical supplies this time. She had training gear too. She saw the look on my face and didn't need an explanation. "If we're going to protect him," she said, her voice firm, "he needs to trust us completely, and we need to trust him." So we began. Our rehabilitation plan wasn't in any military handbook. We threw out the rulebook of command and obedience. The goal wasn't to force Fera to comply, it was to earn his trust. He would set the pace. We started with something that used to be impossible, a simple medical exam. Before, even trying to check his wounds would send him into a frenzy. This time, I sat on the floor right beside him, just talking, keeping my voice low and steady. Fera trembled as Sophia approached, but he didn't bolt. He held his ground. "The physical wounds are healing well," Sophia noted, her hands moving gently over his old scars. Then she stopped. But watch his reaction to certain touches. They used pain as a training tool. My jaw tightened. "Show me where." For the next hour, Sophia showed me every point where Fera would flinch, the spots where shock collars had been used, where brutal corrections had left invisible, lasting trauma. With every flinch, my resolve hardened. Drummond's whole operation had to come down. The real breakthrough happened that afternoon. Instead of barking orders, I tried something different. I just talked to him. "Hey, Fera," I asked, "would you like to check the perimeter with me?" His ears perked up. He seemed to actually consider it. And then, he made his own choice. He walked over and stood by my side. We walked the entire boundary of the ranch together. I'd point out a potential weak spot in the fence, and he'd add his own 2 cents, with a subtle shift in his posture or a flick of his ears. We weren't handler and animal anymore. We were 2 veterans working as a team. Sarah Xavier, the widow of the whistleblower, came by later with more of her husband's files. She saw us working together, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Mike would be so proud," she said. This is what military working dogs were meant to be, partners, not tools. As Fera's trust in us grew, so did his confidence. He started sleeping closer to my bed, eventually choosing a spot right at the foot of it. He was still vigilant, always watching, but the desperate fear was gone. He was protecting the ranch, not because of his training, but because he had chosen it as his mission. The biggest test came with a thunderstorm. The sound of thunder used to send him into a full-blown panic attack, a flashback to the battlefield. But this time, as the first rumbles echoed across the mountains, he didn't run. He just pressed himself against my leg. "It's okay," I said softly. "We're safe here." He looked up at me, and in his eyes, I saw it. Complete trust. He chose to seek comfort instead of fleeing from his fear. That evening, Sophia got a call. Drummond's company had scheduled a major demonstration for potential clients in 2 weeks. Military observers, private contractors, even foreign buyers would be there. They were planning to showcase their enhanced training methods. At the mention of Drummond's name, Fera's ears flattened, but he didn't tremble. He just moved closer to me, his body tense with readiness. "That was it. That was our window. A public demonstration means witnesses," I said. "If we can expose what they're doing there, it's risky," Sophia warned. "Drummond's men are still watching this ranch." As if to answer her, Fera stood up. His posture was straight, head held high. He was every inch the military working dog. But now, he had a dignity that came from healing, not just from training. "He's more than ready," I said, my voice quiet but sure. "He's choosing to fight back." Later that night, as I sat thinking, Fera did something he'd never done before. He walked over and rested his head on my knee, just for a moment. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. It was a soldier's way of saying, "I've got your back," and I knew, together, we were going to get his. Word of Fera and Guto spread through the small town of Puso de Serra like a dry season wildfire. It all started with Marcos Silva, the old-timer who owned the local feed store. Marcos was a veteran, one of the FEB, the Brazilian expeditionary force that fought in Italy during World War II. During his weekly deliveries to Guto's ranch, he saw the change in Fera. "That dog has the look," he'd tell the regulars hanging around his store, leaning on a sack of corn. "It's the same look the dogs in my unit had. He's not just some rescue, he's one of ours." That's all it took. The news traveled fast through the veteran network. The first to answer the call was Lieutenant Aurelio Costa, a retired Army K-9 instructor. He drove over 5 hours, arriving at the ranch one morning, leaning heavily on a wooden cane. He looked Guto, a man he'd never met, straight in the eye. "Major Drummond." Costa's voice was tight, filled with a cold, controlled anger. I knew something wasn't right with his program. I lost 2 good dogs to his enhanced training methods myself. Both were labeled unstable right after they started showing unexplained injuries. Fera, who had become fiercely protective of the ranch, and Guto, watched the old man from his post at Guto's side, but the handler's presence didn't trigger any fear. Instead, the Malinois seemed to recognize a kindred spirit. Dr. Sophia, who was there to document Fera's progress, watched in amazement. Costa sat down on the porch steps, speaking to Fera in that unique, rhythmic cadence that only military K-9 handlers share. Fera's response was incredible. He was alert, but relaxed, showing none of the trauma responses that had plagued him. "He remembers the good handlers," Costa observed, a sad smile touching his lips. "The ones who treated their dogs like partners, not equipment." Drummond tried to crush that spirit out of them, but he couldn't, not completely. The next visitor was Patricia Oliveira. Her son, Davi, had served in the Middle East with a service dog. She didn't come empty-handed. She brought a package of fresh, prime meat, just for Fera. "These heroes deserve the best," she insisted, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Fera, despite everything he'd been through, accepted her offering with a gentle courtesy that spoke volumes about his true nature. Patricia wiped a tear from her cheek. "My Davi would be here himself." But she didn't need to finish. They all understood the cost of war. The real turning point, though, came when Sheriff Mario Peixoto paid an unofficial visit to the ranch. The sheriff was a 20-year Army veteran himself before joining law enforcement, and his department had its own K-9 unit. After Guto and Dr. Sophia laid out the whole story, Peixoto's face was set like stone. "This stops in our county," he declared, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Drummond's people might have connections, but they aren't above local law. We'll set up patrols, keep an eye on your access road." And he was true to his word. Soon, the Puso da Serra police cruisers became a regular sight, making slow passes by the ranch entrance. The deputies would stop, have a quick chat with Guto, and even let Fera inspect their patrol cars, sniffing around the tires and open doors. With each friendly wave, with each positive interaction, Fera's confidence grew, patching the holes Drummond had torn in his spirit. Even Dr. Sophia's veterinary colleagues rallied. They created a network of safe clinics, places where Fera could get any care he needed without any risk of interference from Drummond's far-reaching organization. That evening, as the sun set over the hills, Guto stood on his porch, Fera leaning against his leg. He watched a patrol car make its slow, reassuring pass down the road. For the first time, he felt the immense, comforting weight of a community standing with him. He was no longer alone in this fight. This wasn't just his battle anymore. The enhanced protocol demonstration was set. Major Elias Drummond had picked a private training facility, tucked away on the border between Minas Gerais and Sao Paulo. It was remote, but perfectly accessible for his VIP list, retired generals, foreign investors, and the heads of private security firms. The date was locked in. Just 5 days from now, at the Valenti Ranch, Agent Ribeiro laid it all out for Guto and Sophia. "This is the grand finale of his program," he explained, his voice grim. "He's going to parade high-value dogs, some with records just like Fera's, claiming he's regained control. His clients are chomping at the bit. They're buying the twisted idea that trauma can be honed into a weapon, a more aggressive, more obedient tool under the kitchen table." Fera's ears twitched. He was a silent participant, sensing the urgency, the tense climate of a plan taking shape. He understood the gravity in their voices. Sophia spread Captain Xavier's documents across the table. Her expression was determined. "These papers aren't enough," she stated, her gaze sweeping over the files. "We need something visceral. We need visual proof of the cruelty. Something that will shatter Drummond's credibility right in front of all his potential buyers." Guto's gaze fell to Fera, who lay alert and watchful. A weary but steady look was in his eyes. "The proof is right here," he said softly, gesturing towards the dog. "But how do we show the world his scars without putting him directly in harm's way? Without turning him into a target?" The spark of an idea ignited in Sophia's eyes. "It was audacious, a gamble, but it just might work. With my clinic's equipment," she began, "and a little help from our inside man, Lieutenant Costa." A daring plan began to form, a counter-demonstration of their own. The most difficult piece of the puzzle was getting Fera inside the event. Guto, ever the pragmatist, pointed out the obvious flaw. That training center will be a fortress. Drummond will be expecting us. He knows we're coming for him. Sophia countered with a confident smile. He'll be expecting a frontal assault. An attack, she said. He won't be expecting a demonstration of dignity. And so, the plan was set in motion. The infiltration would be Guto's part. Using his old military credentials, polished up with some convincing fake documentation from Agent Ribeiro, he would pose as a wealthy, potential buyer. Fera would be by his side, fitted with a new, imposing muzzle. It was a piece of misdirection, a detailed design to project a false sense of confidence in Drummond, making him believe Fera was still a contained, volatile threat. Then came the exposure. During the climax of Drummond's presentation, when all eyes were on him and his supposedly reconditioned dogs, Guto would give a silent signal. It was a simple voice command they had practiced relentlessly for days, a trigger for what they called the March of Dignity. This was the trigger, the heart of their plan. Fera, instead of displaying aggression, would execute a flawless, elite-level obedience routine. He would move with the precision and grace of a champion. But then, at a specific, predetermined point, he would stop. He would hold his position and expose himself, offering a clear view of his body. That's when Sophia and Lieutenant Costa, positioned strategically among the crowd, would act. With a hidden, high-resolution camera, they'd film the scars that marred Fera's neck and flanks. These marks of torture, normally faint, would be impossible to miss. They would be illuminated by a special gel, visible only under a discreet ultraviolet light from a device Guto would carry. If this works, Agent Ribeiro concluded, his voice a low hum of anticipation, the footage will be irrefutable. It will prove that Drummond fraudulently classified an elite dog as unstable just to cover up his own monstrous abuse. It'll be the nail in the coffin for his career, his contracts, everything. The night before the operation was thick with unspoken tension. Guto and Fera sat together on the porch of the ranch house, the quiet of the countryside wrapping around them. The Belgian Malinois was calm, a steady presence beside Guto, but the air crackled with anticipation. Guto looked down at his companion, his rugged face softening. "No matter what happens tomorrow," he whispered, his voice for Fera alone, "you are a hero, you're ready." In response, Fera turned his head, and for the very first time since they had met, he gently licked Guto's hand. It wasn't just a simple act of affection, it was a silent, solemn oath, a bond forged in pain and sealed in trust. They had found each other, healed each other. Now, it was time to fight, not just for Fera, but for the justice of every dog who hadn't been so lucky, every voice that had been silenced by cruelty. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story of incredible courage, a tale that exposes a dark secret and celebrates the unbreakable bond between a man and a dog. Our story begins at Fort Alpha, Drummond's private training center, but this place wasn't a training camp. It was a fortress, cold and imposing, looking more like a maximum security prison. Into this den walks Guto, a 35-year-old man with a rugged face and a weary gaze. He's dressed sharply in a blazer and dark sunglasses, looking every bit the serious investor. By his side, on a tight leather leash, is Fera, a magnificent Belgian Malinois. But Fera is muzzled, his true power hidden, though his presence alone is enough to send shivers down your spine. They are greeted by Major Elias Drummond, a man in his 50s with cold eyes and a spotless uniform. He's the security consultant, the king of this dark castle. He smiles, but Guto sees right through him, seeing the butcher beneath the polish. "Good of you to come, Mr. Valenti," Drummond says, his voice slick. His eyes fall on Fera with pure contempt. "I see you brought zero for comparison. A shame he couldn't overcome the trauma. Some assets," he sneers, "are just unrecoverable." Guto's grip on the leash tightens, but his voice is steady. "He's an elite Malinois, Major, just poorly managed." The demonstration begins. Drummond parades a series of tense, hyper-aggressive dogs. He barks commands, reinforcing them with violent jerks and the cruel buzz of shock collars. The terror in the dog's eyes is a gut punch. High above in a private box, Dr. Sofia Mendonca, a brilliant scientist with an empathetic soul, watches with Lieutenant Costa. They have a camera and a special UV scanner, ready for their part in this dangerous play. On the floor, Agent Ribeiro is disguised as a waiter, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. "We break them and we rebuild them," Drummond boasts to his wealthy guests. "We create combat machines without fear. This is enhanced obedience." For the grand finale, Drummond calls for the most traumatized dog in his program, a Doberman so broken it can barely stand. This is the moment. Guto raises his voice, making sure everyone can hear. Zero, or rather, Fera, show Major Drummond and his guests what true obedience is. Drummond lets out a mocking laugh, but then Guto gives his command. It's not an order. It's a single word he has spent months using to rebuild Fera's shattered mind, an anchor to his sanity, home. And just like that, everything changes. Fera stops. He ignores Drummond, the lights, the whispers. He looks at Guto, and you can see the confusion in his amber eyes melt away, replaced by pure clarity. Instead of attacking, Fera executes a flawless routine of military discipline. He marches, sits, lies down, his movements a symphony of perfect obedience. This isn't the work of fear, it's the work of trust. Then, at the precise moment he and Sophia had planned, Fera stops. He faces the crowd, and at a silent signal from Guto, he completely relaxes his neck, exposing the spot where an ID tag used to be. In that instant, Guto triggers a small UV emitter on his watch. Simultaneously, from the box above, Sophia unleashes a powerful UV light and scanner. The effect is devastating. The large screen, which had been showing Drummond's profit charts, is now filled with a high-resolution image of Fera's neck. Under the UV light, the hidden scars from high-impact shock collars glow, an eerie, sickly green. Another image flashes, showing old trauma marks on his liver, undeniable proof of intentional, brutal abuse. The crowd's murmurs erupt into alarm. Guto rips off his sunglasses and pulls the muzzle from Fera's face. This, he roars, his voice echoing through the hall, is not a masterpiece. It is torture. Chaos erupts. Drummond screams orders, but it's too late. Agent Ribeiro and other disguised federal agents move in, arresting Drummond and his cronies. The footage of Fera became the unshakable evidence that brought down an empire of abuse. The truth about 27 other missing dogs was finally revealed, and Fera, the dog once dismissed as Zero, was reinstated into military service and retired with full honors. He found his forever home at the Valenti Ranch, where he spends his days patrolling the hills, not as a soldier, but as a guardian and a friend. In saving Fera, Guto found his own path back from the darkness, learning that the best way to heal is to light the way for someone else. Thank you for watching this incredible story of hope and justice. If it moved you, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more content that matters. See you next time.